Stories That Matter. The journey of life from birth to death is an extraordinary trip, sometimes filled with great joy and excitement, but at other times filled with pain, sorrow, and disappointment. Stories That Matter shares both extremes with you. Sometimes our stories will make you feel very happy, but the journey of life is not all happiness. Other times, the journey of life will make you feel sad, for all of us have experienced both extremes. Stories That Matter will begin right after the break with a story that will touch your heart in the journey of life.
Welcome to Stories That Matter. I'm your host, Doug Thompson, with my special guest, Paula Williamson. Paula, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
And by the time the audience sees this, you and your husband will have already been in town. We're in Abilene. You're in Abilene for an event. We're at the Kansas Auto Racing Museum right now shooting this segment. And you and your husband have come in for a benefit called Food for the Holidays. And all of the money that's raised from that goes to help out for people who can't afford anything for Thanksgiving or Christmas. And so there's a couple of churches, one church here in Chapman that's going to help, and another one that's called Church Women United. And so they'll take the proceeds, buy food cards, and help them out with people. So thank you guys for coming in all the way from Arizona.
Thank you for inviting us.
And where do you live at in Arizona?
Mesa, Arizona.
How long you been there?
3 years. 5 in Arizona, but 3 at Mesa.
Before we went on the camera, we were talking a little about an event out there that you had your guitar and you were in a place. And
yeah.
Tell us about it.
Okay. Well, I went into this. There are very few places out there that have Western music, and so we went into this place where we could entertain. And of course, I've got John Wayne with me, and the man said he didn't really own the place. He said he just runs it. He said the man on the wall. He said, now that's who owns the place. And I said, oh, that is a big picture of Jesus walking on the water. And I said, I know that man. And he said I could sing here. And so I started singing there, and I sang there for a couple of seasons. We have snowbirds, so it's almost like a reverse season to Branson. And so we sang for the snowbirds for a couple of seasons, and then, like I say, we started singing for more military stuff. But that was a lot of fun.
When we were talking off camera, you were telling me how much you enjoy working with the wounded warriors and the military, and that's just a fantastic story.
Yes. Well, we got a couple of retired. One's an Army colonel, and one is a Coast Guard veteran. They have different rankings, so I can't remember his rank. But anyway, they're both retired, and just started inviting us to all kinds of military events, and the Arizona Hall of Fame to their gala that they have once a year, and they invite us to entertain there, and so we started singing with them, and there's different salutes that send new recruits, have a big celebration for them, and kind of send them off with a grand.
As they deploy.
Yeah, as they deploy. And so that's in Tempe. And they get together all of the kids from Tempe. It doesn't matter which service that they're going into, but they have all of them, and they send them off with a salute. And so we started entertaining for that. And just all kinds of different veterans. I know every one of the branches service songs.
Well, I bet you do.
Yeah, and so I'd sing all the service songs and the national anthem, and really started getting more patriotic. And then I wrote this. I have a CD now, and I wrote a lot of the songs on there that aren't 100 years old, like the service songs, but there's a lot of them on there that are the old patriotic songs that everybody knows.
And songs that you've written on there too?
Yes, a couple of them.
If our audience wants to try to get that, how do they go about it? Because we can put the information on the screen.
Well, you just have to go to the website.
We'll put the website on the screen.
JohnWayneShow.com, and the name of the CD is We Are One.
We Are One.
We Are
Ooh,
One.
I like that.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah.
You and John do that.
Yes.
When you're in your shows.
Yes, we do a lot of patriotic songs, skit, recitation, things together.
Well, John Wayne, of course, his position was very clear.
Yes.
Everybody knew what he stood for.
Yes, very patriotic.
Yeah, well, awesome.
Yes.
Nobody just shows up in the entertainment business.
Yeah.
And so tell me your story. How is it that you got into the entertainment business? Because many of the people that we see and when we talk to in Branson, man, they started like Braden Sunshine. He was not in Branson so much, but like he started, he said, I had a hearing problem. I couldn't speak, but I could hear sounds. and he said I could hear the musical notes. And so before he could even talk, he was able to pick up music.
Right.
And so it was a natural for him. What about you? How'd you get into the business?
I started yodeling, my mother says, when I was 2. I never believed her, but I couldn't prove her wrong because I can't remember. So she said she always called the radio station and requested Rex Allen Sr.'s Jawbreaker. I have since visited with Rex Allen Jr. and he does not know about that song. And so I finally hunted it up, and it's a yodeling song. Has several different styles of yodeling done with a symphony orchestra, and had no words to it. I thought, well, maybe a 3-year-old can do that. I don't know. Yeah. Anyway, but I put words to it, and so now it's on one of my albums too.
Well, that's neat. Was your mom in the music business?
Oh, she had a huge record collection, and my daddy was a Baptist preacher. So, you know, like everybody else, I sang at church. And my dad pastored a church in the very remotest part of Arkansas. And they used to always tease us that the sun set between our house and town.
I want to come back to that in just a minute.
Okay.
You're watching Stories That Matter. We'll be right back after this break. Welcome back to Stories That Matter. I'm your host, Doug Thompson, with my special guest, Paula Williamson. And Paula, we were just talking about, I asked if your family was musically inclined. You said your mother always had interest in music. Your dad was it a Southern Baptist minister?
Southern Baptist minister,
Southern Baptist minister. So that means you were at every church service.
Yeah, oh yeah.
2 or 3 on Sundays, Wednesday nights, and everywhere in between. And you had to sit on the front row.
Yep,
and you had to be perfect behavior.
Oh,
because if somebody would say, look at her.
Oh, yeah.
And you sang in the choir?
Oh, yes, and went to, like you say, every Sunday school, and you know, and gosh, I grew up, I didn't know, anything different than God.
And that's a good thing.
You know,
Did you play music when you were in the church?
I didn't play so much. I didn't teach myself guitar until years later. I was about 16. But always sang, just always sang, and grew up singing. You know, if nobody else had a special on Sunday, then I did. And so Daddy would say, "Paula, come sing," and so you just did.
Was it your own music you were singing then,
no, No, I didn't really start writing music until I was about 16, but didn't even think about it at the time. You know, I sang whatever Mother said to sing.
Yeah.
She played the piano, so I sang.
Where'd you grow up at?
All over. My dad pastored several churches throughout the Ozarks, and so all the way. I was actually born in Kansas. I never lived there, but
where were you born at?
Paola.
Yeah, just across the line.
Yeah.
Well, Kansas claims you then. That's great. That's a good deal.
So anyway, but my folks lived at Raymore, I think, at the time. Raymore Peculiar or something in there. Yeah. But anyway, but he pastored all the way from there. He went to seminary in Fort Worth, Texas when I was in 3rd grade. And so then he pastored a little church in Daisy, Arkansas. And there was no Southern Baptist church anywhere close by. And it wasn't a church within 50 miles of the place. And so he started with Resort Ministries and did a church there. And like I say, they said our house sat between the sunset and town, you know.
Well, that's neat.
Yeah, couldn't get the radio even out there. So I sang. I used to play all of Mother's records and that's where I learned to yodel so much.
Wow. And now musical instruments, other than the guitar, do you play any others?
I can play the piano, but I don't really do it. I just mostly play the guitar.
Just enough to be dangerous with it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And your style of music, has it changed from when you were a young girl to where you are now?
Probably a lot. I do more Western music, and they really split off from country music because country music is the crying in your beer and the bad things, and Western music is more the sunset and seeing the hand of God and just, the more inspirational type music. Yeah.
And you and your husband are on the road quite a bit, I suppose, throughout the year.
Quite a bit. We try to stay home as often as we can, but we go as much as we do.
Yeah, yeah. And you folks are in Branson quite a bit.
Yes, yeah.
And of course, as we're filming this right now, let's see, we're in November, so Branson will pick back up again probably mid-April.
Yep.
And
March,
you guys will be going
April.
back up March, April
Yeah,
to
somewhere in there.
Branson?
Yeah.
And I know you were kind enough to come out for this show here that we're doing in Abilene, and to come from Arizona to here was a trip of about 20 plus hours, 21, 22 hours?
Well, probably all in all, yeah. We counted 16, I think, on the road.
16?
Yeah.
You and your husband good travelers together?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. Yeah. He drives and I sleep. So we do pretty good.
Yeah, that would work out well.
Yeah.
And I know that the show that you're doing here, you're multiple people in this show. You're going to
Yeah.
do some Katherine Hepburn.
Yeah.
Have you studied Katherine Hepburn, at least in that role?
I have. They asked us way back, oh gosh, I couldn't tell you how many years ago, to go up to Connecticut and do Katherine Hepburn. And I said I could do that. I said I could at least do the one with Rooster Cogburn, because that's the only part of her that I do. But I studied for 2.5 months to do Katherine Hepburn herself. And she was quite an interesting lady. She was really very eccentric in a lot of ways. And so anyway, we went up there and flew into New York and went over, and I didn't realize until we were on the plane. I said, where are we going? I said, I thought we were doing New York. You know, I'm from the Midwest. If you fly into Missouri, you could do a show in Missouri. Well, we went into New York, and we were going to Connecticut. And I said, that's her hometown.
Yeah, that's what
thought,
I was thinking when you said that.
Yeah, so that's where she was from. And I thought, these people know Katherine Hepburn, you know. So I walked in doing Katherine Hepburn, but you know, the second I walked in through the door, they brought in 4 celebrities ahead of me, impersonators, and then they brought me in, and the first thing one lady said, oh, they got Katherine Hepburn. They got a Katherine Hepburn. I thought, I passed.
Did family come up afterwards, or
Yeah,
close friends
she
come up
had
and talk to you?
cousins, I believe, because but I think, you know, they were cousins or, you know, some sort of relatives, and they said, wow, you're doing all, you know, and of course
You're
they
just
tell
like
you,
her.
they tell you never to break character, and you know, the first thing they do is ask you, where do you come from, you know, that you can do Katherine Hepburn. So it's like, I can't tell you that.
And I know tonight, of course, you're doing some Patsy Cline.
Yes.
Tell me about you and Patsy Cline.
Well, Patsy Cline was very much a very hillbilly. I mean, she really was. She was from Virginia, and she grew up, I have to say, wow. She grew up at the end of during the war, and so her mother was, I mean, totally lived off the land. At 16 years old, she raised her, had her at 16 or 17 years old, and raised this kid, you know, basically off in a cabin that only had a fireplace. I don't know if I could live very long in that setting, but she, you know, obviously came out and became a very successful.
Oh, she
had a beautiful voice.
She's one of those that comes along and just once
an
in a
icon.
lifetime. Yeah, she is. And I can remember hearing one of the band members that talked about the first time that she came on stage, and they said, you know, we get a lot of people come on and, you know, they're going to do well and stuff, but every now and then there's somebody who comes on and just has that voice that even the people in the business stop and they say, really?
Wow, yeah.
Wow,
Yeah,
you know, is
and
this?
she did.
She did. She had one of those. She
Yeah,
had that.
she did.
How long did you have to study her to be able to get up and do Patsy Cline songs?
Well, it's funny because I worked in Branson at the Hard Luck Diner, and so many people would sing Patsy Cline, you know, and I thought, I'm not ever going to do Patsy Cline. I'm going to stick to Patsy Montana, because, you know, she was the most famous yodeler. And I thought, I'm just not going to do Patsy Cline because everybody does her, and, you know, so many don't do her very well. And so we were at we had our theater, and we went to South Texas, and everywhere we went, do you do any Patsy Cline? Do you do any Patsy Cline? I told John Wayne here, I said, by golly, when I get back to Branson, I'm going to learn 3 Patsy Cline songs if it kills me. And so I did. And unbeknownst to me, a guy was sitting in the back of the theater, so I was practicing in between shows at the theater, and he walked up and he said, do you know 5 Patsy Cline songs? And I thought, 5, that's it. And so he said, you're hired. And so for the next 2.5 years, I did a Hank and Patsy Revisited show in Branson. And so from then, you know, you just learn more and more songs, and he was really spot on. You know, you had to know Patsy Cline, because he would you know, the second you thought, okay, I'm going to be singing Sweet Dreams and you know, and Crazy tonight, the next show you wouldn't be. You would be singing Walking After Midnight or something else. And so I thought, boy, I got to learn all of those songs, you know. So, and every now and then I run across another song that she recorded, and I think, oh, and it's always fun to learn the newer ones, you know. And granted, they're not new. They're 50 years old now. Yeah, she's been gone 50 years.
Well, doesn't seem like it, does
Yeah,
it?
exactly.
We're going to cut away, take a break. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Stories That Matter. I'm your host, Doug Thompson, with my special guest, Paula Williamson. And we've been talking about lots of things in your life, and it's been great. But you also do Lucille Ball.
Yeah.
How did you, tell me about that.
Well, I started working with John Wayne, and he said, okay, you're going to do Lucille Ball. And I said, I'm what? And so I started, believe it or not, Lucille Ball had 6 shows where John Wayne made a guest appearance on her shows.
They liked each other.
Yeah, they did. And so we looked at all those, and I thought, oh, gee, here we go. And so we just started putting the costume together. And, you know, it's funny because, you know, you just pull out the part of yourself that relates to that particular character, kind of like with Katharine Hepburn, you know, and so next thing you know, here we are doing a whole stand as Lucille Ball.
Well, you know, you speak of Lucille Ball. We did a series of shows, and they were entitled, Hey, Whatever Happened To? Yeah. And the very first show we did on Celebrity was Vivian Vance. Oh, and Vivian Vance was from Cherryville, Kansas. And her sister brought out the family album, and it was just like talking to Vivian. Vivian was gone by then, right, but it was amazing. And so their friendship was very strong.
Yeah. Yeah, I've always heard that it was, and I've also heard that it wasn't. So I always wondered what, you know, the real story was.
Well, I think initially it wasn't. Then they had some really good times, and they got very good. And then I'm not sure that it ended so well later.
Well, she had cancer, so you know, I know she was slotted to do where Lucy came back with whatever the other girl's name is, Mary Ann.
Yeah.
But Vivian was supposed to do that, and of course she didn't live to do that.
Yeah. I know that your husband, and maybe you and your husband, have a number of books.
He has. He's the author. I always tell him, I said, he gets the long version. You know, I get 2 verses and a chorus. I have got to get my story in there fast. But he's written 7 books across the Brazos, and it's called the Brazos series. And it's a Western. In fact, it goes into Kansas, so there's quite a little bit of history right here in Abilene, Kansas. He meets up with Wild Bill Hickok. And before he was Wild Bill Hickok, but anyway, of course, this is where he died. And he was telling me that this morning. He says, you realize, you know, we're right here where Wild Bill Hickok died.
Well, actually, Wild Bill died in the Dakotas.
Oh.
He was a marshal here.
Oh, okay.
But
he...
Well,
he's the historian. Anyway, I got the
story. Well, you'll pull page 29 out of the book and change that one over.
But I did write the song. They filmed a movie trailer. And the guy who was filming it called me up the night before, and he said, you could write a movie theme song for this trailer, couldn't you? And I said, oh, sure, and you want it by tomorrow, right? And he said, well, maybe the day after we'll record that. So, you know, by 2 weeks later, you know, it was already done and in the can, as they say. Yep.
Well, we're going to put up on the screen the contact information for people if they want to go check out the books that John Wayne wrote.
Yeah, and actually, that song was on the Western charts and went to number 7 out of 30, yeah.
That's one that you did?
Yeah, it's called Across the Brazos. It's the name of the song.
And you wrote it?
I did.
Awesome, awesome. You have been quite a songwriter.
Yeah.
How many songs do you suppose you've written over your lifetime?
Maybe 200 tops, but you know, it's probably more than 100, but somewhere in there.
Yeah.
But yeah.
And the other books. Now, there's a whole series of books that are under that same title?
Yeah, and it's the same character that goes through all the whole series. His love interest that he meets in the 3rd book, or the 2nd, I don't know which, but anyway, he meets her, and then the Civil War. You know, he gets caught up in the Civil War, and she's riding out to meet him as they're marching through one of the cities, and she gets hit by a Yankee bullet and has amnesia and doesn't know who she is and gets caught up in the war herself. So the first 3 books are him, or first 4 books are him. And then the 6th book, I think, is her story, where she's at and what's happening to her. And then they come back together in the 7th book. So it's really a neat story.
Are there more books in the wings?
For him, yes. He's doing a new series on Harold Bell Wright, who is the founder of Branson, Missouri. He's the one who put Branson, Missouri on the map. Wrote Shepherd of the Hills, and very interesting life. He lived the hobo era. you know, when the trains were just going out west, and so lived the hobo life, and all, you know, the Great Depression.
Oh yeah.
You know, so
Yeah.
lived through all of that.
Well, it's funny, I guess you'd mention that when you think about the history of Branson, because my brother and I raced cars. We raced up at 65 Speedway outside of Branson, and we went into town when we were staying there racing and partied. We had a lot of iced tea and stuff, you know, and so Branson didn't even, the Strip wasn't even there
Right.
yet. None of that had,
Right.
nothing had happened there yet.
Right. It's all the fishing towns, and then the ball lovers started putting shows that, you know, they used to sing downtown. You can't sing downtown on the street corner anymore. That's illegal.
Your involvement with Branson and your husband's too. What's his involvements earlier than yours, or about the same time?
About the same time. Well, I grew up around the area. My grandparents used to go down to Table Rock Lake and fish all the time. Gosh, you know, they lived off of catfish all winter long because they go down there and fish. But Ermal came to Branson about 15, 16 years ago, and doing John Wayne, and they asked him to come in and finish out a contract, and so he did that, and I just happened to have run across him, and he was sitting at one end of the little shopping complex, and I was singing at the other end, and one of the gals said, I'd like him to be in our, we were doing a Western Legends show, and they asked me to come as Patsy Cline, and he still swears up and down this never happened, but it did. She said, I'd really like that John Wayne to come be in our show, but said, I probably can't pay him enough. And so she said, would you go down and ask him? And I said, well, I'm not afraid of him. I said, I'll go ask him. And so I went down, and he said, I wouldn't go anywhere with you for love nor money. And I said, well, fine, it's your loss, you know.
Did that really happen?
Famous, oh, yeah, I really did.
And he didn't remember it, huh?
Oh, well, yeah, he remembers that. But, and then I kept telling him, you need a yodeler in your show, you know. My idea of, you know, one guy talking and doing a 2-hour show, you know, I thought, you'd really have to be a diehard fan to listen 2 hours. I said, you need a yodeler in your show. What would be better? You know, Western music. And he said, John Wayne never worked with a yodeler.
He was really in character, wasn't he?
Yeah.
We got to cut away, take a break. We'll be right back.
With a little bit of yodeling, there'll be stuff.
Welcome back to Stories That Matter. I'm still your host, Doug Thompson, and we're still talking to Paula Williamson. Paula, what's your future plans?
Well, one of my goals is to sing at the White House, and I've written this patriotic CD, We Are One, and I'd really like to see some patriotism coming back to to our country. I said long before this past election that whoever got it, our country was going to need some healing, and I still think they do. We need young people that know why we fly a flag, why we have symbols that we do, why do we have the statues and the monuments that we have. Who were these people? What's the history behind that? And unless somebody says something, you know, I think, you know, we're going to continue to burn flags and nobody's going to care. And it's time we cared. It's time we said, hey, you know, this is my flag, and I want it respected, and show them why we respect the flag, why we uphold our veterans, and we give honor to our veterans.
Awesome. We're anxious to see the show tonight. Hope you've enjoyed this segment of Stories That Matter.